Here's a king and pawn endgame to test your calculating skills. Composed in 1931 by a certain Mr. Lewitt. And it looks as though it could arise from an actual game position. I'm sure that was probably the inspiration. But it is a composition. But anyway, that's why I quite like this. Because it is actually very practical. And it shows that really fantastic things can occur from seemingly, well, pretty straightforward positions actually. If you want to pause the video and work out the solution, then now's your chance to do so. You could even use a real chess set, that sometimes helps. Okay, here's the solution. Let's pick this one apart. Well, you can see that white has an extra pawn. However, black threatens to take here and move the king across and win. So white needs something pretty drastic. Now, a5 doesn't work. That simply gets taken, and then in this position after c5, in fact, black's king can just step back and will stop any pawn pushing through. Okay, back we go. So not a5, but instead in this position c5 is the correct move. Well, d6 is coming, so really that has to be taken. And now a5. So white has created a passed pawn. But black has a passed pawn too. The king obviously can't get back to stop the a pawn. But black does have this c pawn. So it looks as though the pawns are going to queen together. But in fact, if pawn to a6, then black is fine in this position. Both sides get a queen, but black's king is better placed than white, and if anyone's better here, then it's got to be black, because both these pawns are vulnerable. If queen c8 check, then it's actually possible to take that pawn. Black is obviously a bit better. Well, winning chances. However, coming back to this position, so black has just played the pawn to c4. Here's where white gets very tricky. Pawn to d6 is the correct move. This is extraordinary. Now that means the pawn can't advance here because we take and we get a queen before black. So the d pawn here has to be taken. Well, what difference does this make? Both sides will still get a queen. It's really the only thing that black can do. And now black is a pawn up in what looks to be a very regular position. But here comes the bit of magic. Queen d5 check. And this wins. In fact, it wins black's queen. It's quite incredible. If the king takes the pawn, then we've got a kebab here. There we go, the skewer. And if the king goes back to f6, then we've got queen g5 and then f5 check, and we take the queen. There we go, an extraordinary position. So you can see that in both cases the queen moving to g5 is the key square. I just find it incredible that in such a standard position, or a similar, it's not a standard position, but a fairly normal position, that there's such a beautiful trick with d6 and then, you know, these tactics with the queen. But I do know that in queen and pawn endgames, there are so often massive tricks involving checkmates and, you know, winning material. Let me give you an example from one of my own games. And I have to say, it is really, really common that, in my experience in queen and pawn endgames, that tactics arise, massive tactics with checkmates possible, or winning the opposition queen. Now, this was played a long time ago, golly, over 30 years ago, wow, in Sydney. And I was white, they were already on move 57, and the position looks dangerous for black because, well, I've got two passed pawns here, black only has one. However, if black plays c2, in fact, black should hold the position. But instead my opponent played what seems to be a very natural move. He played queen to d4, which simplifies the position. Seems as though black is getting out of all his troubles here. Checking doesn't help at all. The king will just go back. In fact, I exchanged. And now I push my pawn. So black has this pass c pawn. Now he even gets the queen first. But this pawn has potential. My queen is behind this pawn, and in fact it's very good for white now. It's incredible. Yeah, I mean, my queen is in the perfect position actually. My opponent played queen a3, fully expecting the game to end in a draw after queen takes pawn and queen takes pawn. But no. Before taking the pawn on d4, I threw in a check. The king stepped out, and only then did I take the pawn here, because if queen takes pawn on e5, queen f4 is checkmate. Out of the blue, we've got a beautiful checkmating position with the king's retreat blocked by its own pawn. So after queen takes pawn, well, basically I'm winning here, and well, my opponent cracked completely. He moved the king away, preventing the mate. But queen e3 check. I mean, probably there's, yeah, in fact there's no defense at all. Queen e3 check, exchanging queens, and then the a pawn goes through. No, I mean, after queen d4, it's completely winning for white, because there's no proper defense basically. So there you go. Queen and pawn endgames are treacherous. That's the moral of the story. Remember, if you're not a subscriber, then do click on that subscribe button. And if you want to support the channel, then do check out the links in the video description to PayPal or Patreon.com and check out the rewards. Thanks for watching.